I was first taken with them.
When should you take
I know.
Yeah. Ah, sorry. The people are there to see you.
There's a detour on that other road. You don't go back to the past the road.
You can't see the flags. Which flags you can't see? Those ones over there.
Rich,
Oh, here they
give
are.
me a lift.
No, we leave that one on. Queen Anna!
Before we begin, if anybody would like a chair, we have spare chairs here. If somebody needs a chair. That all shot. Tommy Ekvara, Nation Law, Shaw. never here hold Taring on law. Reverend Fathers, TD, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome to this historic and occasion. Today we're here to honour the men who were hanged on the hill up there where you see the cross. 7 men were hanged there, 7 innocent men. They were just picked up from a group and tried, convicted and brought out there. Now the old road from Cork to Killarney ran across the base of the hill. So it was a good point to put up a gallows, a good spot to put up a gallows, and it was to instill terror and fear into the local people. Now the story of the story of the hangings was handed down to me by my father, and he got it from his father, and he got it from his father, and so on. That field is known as Park and Crookig, the hanging field. Now, over the past couple of years, we have been meeting with a view to erect a monument. Now, very little information was known about the happenings, but research was done by the late Dennis O'Connell when we were researching the Carriganima National School book, Tales of the Forest Valley. And that was taken up by people like Thomas Goggin, behind me here. Thomas went to Dublin on several occasions to the National Library researching and photocopying material. And all this was put together by James O'Leary and his daughters, Deirdre and Margaret. What is published has been done by James. He gave it to Sean McSweeney for the Musgrave Outlook magazine. And I think James and Margaret have done a fine job, and Deirdre have done a fine job in putting all the facts together. Now I'll hand you over to James O'Leary, who will give you a more detailed account of what happened. Margaret Kayla, Corbinica, the Carriganima, Tasha Dulgas or Love, a Lerudiv, or Nahactria Harlan, so. It is my duty here today to tell you what happened. Later Mr. Tomini will speak to you and he will explain to you why it happened. I made a mistake there. I forgot to welcome the Wexford pikemen. I think they added colour and dignity to the occasion. At every state I'm doing things backwards, but maybe I think they should get a mention. At every state funeral you have a colour party, and I think these Wexford men are acting as a colour party to honour the men who were hanged here, those who died in the Battle of Carriganima, and those whose fate are unknown. Now I would also like to welcome our TD, Donald Minehan, Councillor Martin Coughlin, Councillor and former TD Donald Creed, and former TD in Leinster as well, Tom Meany, both men who served the area with honour and distinction. Now I'll hand you back to James again. Marie Murphy, my apologies. Councillor Marie Murphy. I have to start to explain the situation with the Battle of Carriganima. All these battles and all these executions arose because the people are what was described as bobo. They were really in those years described as the white niggers. They really had nothing. They were kept under free cush, like the Tierney Talloon of the landlords. They were exploited in every way possible. So eventually they decided to uprise. It is great that the people of Wexford are here today, because really the uprising here, the White Boys, was in many ways a continuation of the uprising of 1798 in Wexford. The 1798 uprising led the way for the people here. It did not come to this part of the country for the reason of language. In 1798, all along the east coast was English speaking, and this part of the world was Irish speaking. At the Battle of Vinegar Hill, both sides said the rosary before it. The Wexford men said it in English, and the Crown forces who were from North Cork, from Meath, and some other country I can't think of at the moment, said it in Irish. But the causes of the insurrection here, the White Boys, were the same as 1798. Their methods were much the same as well. In Wexford, the people gathered on top of the hills because it was impossible for the foot soldiers and the horse soldiers to get at them on top of the hills. Here in West Muskerry, we had the same sort of procedure. The people gathered on top of the hills. The first battle was Carriganima, which happened on the 21st of January 1822. And if you did go from here to Bantry, we'll go past Ballingeary, go up towards Carriganima, and then you go through Narra Pass in the hills. And the people assembled on top of the hills and they threw stones down on top of the British soldiers who were passing underneath. They happened to kill one of them. His name was Smith, and there's a bridge near there called Drogheda Smith to this day. That happened on the 21st of January. On the every day stagecoach used to pass here between Tralee and Cork. And on the 24th of January, the White Boys in this area carried out their first serious engagement. If you look westward along the road there towards Danjo or Erden's Turn, about 3/4 of a mile back, they stopped the stagecoach, they killed one of the drivers, they took the guns and ammunition that was on it, they took the horses and they threw the stagecoach into the bog. Word got through to Macroom and a party of soldiers were sent out to apprehend the culprits. A battle took place at Foyleclar on top of the hill behind you, and it was between the local Irish people and the English soldiers. The local Irish people, according to one account, numbered 5,000 on that day. They had only a couple of muskets between them, and they were up against very well armed, highly trained soldiers. They fired the few muskets they had at the line of soldiers, and the soldiers laid down because they were given orders to do so. The White Boys thought that they had achieved victory and they rushed them, but they ran into hail and lead. And when the plaques unveil the minute, you'll see the number of White Boys killed and wounded at the Battle of Carriganima. We have no record of their names because they're ornery folks and I just picked them up and buried them. After the Battle of Carriganima, there were 21 prisoners taken. They were taken to Cork jail and they were tried under Judge McKelland, who was known as the hanging judge. He was known as Judge Baron McKelland. And they were tried on February the 18th, 1822. Now of the 21 captured, only 14 were brought to trial. And of the 14 that brought to trial, 9 were sentenced to death. 5 of them got away. They were not sentenced to anything. One of them was a man by the name of Scriven, who was described as being living 3 miles due south of the battle. And to this day we can locate Scriven's living 3 miles due south of the battle. There were 2 Sweeneys there, one spelling McSwiney and the other Sweeney. There was a Humphrey Lynch and there was a John Kelleher. Eventually 9 men were sentenced to be executed, but it was a cat and mouse affair. Only 4 of them were brought out here to be hung on the last day of February 1822. The other 5 were kept back until the 1st of April. We have written on the plaque of those other 5, fate not known. But this morning I was reading about one of them and I have written about it in the Lee Valley Outlook about Con Buckley. He was flogged twice. I think I wrote that time that he was flogged at the flogging post. But I seen this morning in stuff I was reading that Thomas Goggin got down from the archives in Dublin. Thomas Goggin was flogged twice, alright, but he was flogged on separate dates, and his flogging was 80 lashes, as I said, but he was flogged from the Northgate Bridge to the Southgate Bridge on the 26th of March. And on the 15th of April, he was flogged from the Southgate Bridge to the Northgate Bridge. That was Cornelius Buckley. There was a transportation ship parked at Cove at the same time, and some of the people there whose fate we do not know more than likely were transported. In all, Baron McKellen, the hanging judge, had 41 men executed hung in County Cork on that date. He was able to state in his account back to the authorities in the 15th of May that year, "My lords, it gives me great pleasure to say to you that the county of Cork is no longer a county of rebels. And this is the first time I've ever seen in history where this county is known as the county of rebels. But I would like to say to you folks here today that I don't think Baron McCallant was right when he described that County Cork was no longer a county of rebels. Because I can remember being in Croke Park a few weeks ago and the whole place was full of rebels. We were always saying in Irish history, if only it came over. Well, that day in Croke Park, we were only fighting with sticks, but we had fellas from all over the world with us. There was fellas whose descendants came from America, and there was one man, he even came from as far away as the Fiji Islands. Whoever he was. Now let's get back to what we are commemorating here today. There were 2 separate hangings that we know of definitely. Of the 9 people that were sentenced to be hung, 4 were eventually hung here on the last day of February 1822. They were brought out from Cork on a specially constructed long black wagon drawn by 4 horses. With them were 5 men who were to be hung at Dressure. The battle at Carriganima took place on the 24th of January 1822. It was 3 days after the battle of Carriganima. And the battle at Dressure took place on 3 days after that again. There were 27 prisoners taken at Dressure. And of those 27, 4 were executed at Dressure, one in Kilmichael. One of the men that was hung at Dressure was captured at Carriganima. I suppose they were in a hurry that so many hangings. They didn't take him back to Carriganima because that was the orders at the time. He was hung at Dressure. The orders of Judge McCallant of the people to be executed was that they were to be hung at a spot overlooking the place where their crimes took place. And it was at the cross up on the side of the hill was the place that overlooked both where the stagecoach was stopped and where the battle took place at Foyleclar. The 14 men that were on trial in Cork were Daniel Murphy, Daniel Reardon, Patrick Lehan, Patrick Green, Thomas Goggin, Con Buckley, Con Lucy, Humphrey Lynch, John Keller, Jeremiah Hurley, Thomas Grimman, Tim McSweeney, Michael Lynch and Murty Sweeney. At the trial, Jeremiah Hurley was partly acquitted because one of the Protestant rectors said that he was a simpleton. Now, he might have been a simpleton or he might have been a very good actor, I don't know, but he wasn't hung. When the executions took place here, their bodies were taken back to Cork jail. Now, there was a reason for that and the Crown authorities knew what they were doing. Speaking to some of the people in Wexford, what happened after the battles in Wexford, where there were an awful lot of bodies, they were buried in shallow graves out in the countryside. Very shallow graves. They had the same tactics in Wexford as the people here had, or as the people here had the same tactics as in Wexford. The people, the ordinary people, men, women and children, went to the high hills. Now it could get very hungry up on top of a hill, so they had sort of grain which they put in their pockets. In this area we knew that people had grain for chewing as well, because on Tahar has it in the Scale Shana, where the 3 degrees were. One of the things was that anybody that put their hand into the Malboy minute take out this grain that they stuck it when Shana got the 3 degrees. Well, there must have been some sort of grain that the people were able to eat. The people from Wexford had this grain in their pockets when they were on top of the hills, and they were buried in shallow graves so that their folks didn't know where they were buried. But the following spring, the grain sprouted, and the people were able to go back to the spots where the grain was sprouting and take out the bodies of their folks. And like the people in the Arden Islands with the Bonnians, when person was lost at sea, they were able to identify their own people by the clothes they were wearing. They were taken and buried in consecrated ground. The same did not happen here. The 4 and 3 men that were hung on top of the hill here at Park and Crockett, their bodies were taken back to Cork jail. They were thrown into a hole known as Paul and Crockett, and they were buried in quicklime. Some people said to me, why didn't we start with a requiem, these proceedings today with a requiem mass? Well, we would have liked to, but we're thinking of the forgotten 10 who laid for nearly 80 years inside in Glasnevin and Dublin. It took nearly 80 years for the people of Ireland to get their bodies out of Glasnevin. At the present time, there are 7 people who were executed on this hill, and their bodies are inside in graves in non-consecrated ground inside in the UCC grounds. If you turn right up O'Donovan Road, you'll see 2 big, huge limestone pillars, and inside that place is Paul and Croppig. And it is something for us to do in the future, when we do get the bodies of those people out here, we will have a requiem mass, and we will bury their bodies in consecrated ground. Where we bury them, well, that will be a thing to be decided. My own personal view is there's a man buried in front of the church in Carriganima, Father Hargan. He was a mighty man and a mighty priest. He went to Cork when the trials were on. He came out with the men who were to be hanged in the Black Beret. He stayed with them all that night. He attended them before they went up to the gallows here on the hill. And he anointed them when they were dead. Now it took them a long time to die, some of them. They were hung one by one. The first man went up and he was hung first. The next man saw the first man being hung. And then the last man saw 3 men being hung before him, and then he was hung. Their relatives and friends gathered at the bottom of this hill. It is described that the scene had an enormous effect on the people gathered around because they were not used to scenes of such brutality. Their bodies were then taken from them. They didn't have them to bury it, and they were taken back to Paul and Croppig and thrown into limestone grave or quicklime graves, I said. But if we do get their bodies back, my own opinion is there's a fine place oak in front of the lawn, in front of the church in Carriganima where Father Harkin is buried, and I think it would be only fitting that they be buried there alongside him. I mentioned the men that were hung here. I'd like to mention also the men from Kilmichael that were hung. The 4 that were hung that were captured at the Battle of Dusshore were Daniel Cronin, Dennis Murphy, Timothy Hallahan, Michael Drummy. Edward Breen, or Reen, was captured at Caminee, and he was hung there as well with them. And the reason why I say that those men's names as well is because they came out from Cork on the same Black Maria. They were held in the Bridewell in Macroom, which is now McGregor Jennings, on the night for 2 nights before their execution. The night before their execution, one of the men that was hung from here, Lucy, his father went into him to know what was being done with the family farm and things like that. That Lucy family lived on the right hand side over there on that hill. Connie Murray now lives in the farm. There are descendants of them living near the town of Macroom, and there are more of them in Killanardrish. Goggin lived on the high road, and on the accounts that I've seen written about them, that's up near where Danger Keller lives. They came up the back road, the Carberk Road. People asked him to look up at his own place for the last time before he would pass by to be hung, and he refused to do so because he was on his knees praying and Father Harkin was comforting him. We today have 2 great granduncles of Thomas Goggin with us. One of them should be on the platform here with me, the man from the hole in the wall, if he's here. Tommy Goggin. Tommy Connell. And alongside me here, if he's set up, please, Thomas Goggin. With carbon dating and DNA, it is possible to identify the people that are buried in an unconsecrated ground inside the wall of the old Cork jail. So I hope that somebody else will take up the mantle and find where they are, identify them, bring them out, bury them in consecrated ground. I am only following in the footsteps of one man, Dennis O'Connell. When we set up the website, the first thing we put onto it was a tribute to Dennis O'Connell. Now I knew Dennis well. I had much interest in history when I knew Dennis because I had interest in football and hurling and other activities. Dennis was very much into history, It's only in the last, I suppose, 10 or 12 years I became interested, especially for the Clondalkin history book. But I would think that this website, as well as being a tribute to the people who are hung here, would be a lasting tribute to Dennis O'Connell, because there's nobody, and I say nobody, in this parish did as much work for the history of it as the late Dennis Connell. Now there are more people to speak, and I suppose it is time for me to shut up. It is time for us to unveil the plaque and honour the people that were executed here. I call now Chairman to proceed to the plaque and unveil it. While he does so, I want to pay tribute to a few people. I will now call on Neddy when he's ready to unveil the plaque.
Father in heaven, we gather here today to honour the memory of our ancestors executed over 180 years ago.
I think it's only appropriate that Father Batty will do the blessing, because his parents soldiers long and hard in the Look National School.
People who are remembered are never really dead, because they're not gone from us. We know that our Father in heaven always holds us in remembrance, and so promises us eternal life. Begging your mercy for those honoured here and for ourselves, I now bless this memorial in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. May all who pass by and see this memorial respect the dead and pray for their everlasting peace. Amen.
And the bride will of Macroom, they were put there as a warning to people. The 5 people that were executed here in 1822, they were executed as a warning to people in this area. So it was very brave men that continued on soldiering. And there were 3 brave men who were executed in 1827. And for me, the bravest of them all, and I hate picking one person out of over everybody else, but I have to, was one man by the name of Patrick Lynch. He was the man who set fire to the barracks in Ballyforney, and he needn't have done it at all. At that time, there was a billet of soldiers in Ballyforney. They were living off the land and what they could gather from the people. They put a rent on the people of crops, either hay or potatoes or corn, whatever it is. They brought them all together in one field and they said they'd have an auction. But nobody turned up the day of the auction, so they burned everything that they'd gathered. That really annoyed the people, and 4 people gathered together in Tyke Bond Keller's pub, and they drew lots to see who would burn the barracks, which had a thatched roof. And the lot fell on Lynch Malons. Now he had a wife and 3 children, but he had a younger brother there. And the younger brother volunteered that he would do the job. And even though the volunteers were founded in 1913, this man to me was the first volunteer, because he didn't have to do it. He could have left the brother go and do the job. He went to the middle of the night with a skillet pot and burning coals. He had a stick and a sop on top of it. When I wrote it from the Irish, and I couldn't put down what most of you would know was a sop, because I put it down as a piece of hay. But what he had on top of the stick was a sop. And when he got there, he found the stick on his mountain, and the soldiers spent a good time trying to find out the matching part of the pot and the matching part of the apron, but they never could. Now he went on the run, and he was captured with Duggan and Goggin here in 1827, and they were hung here as well. And it gives me great pleasure to call on Sagar Paroshta, Ballyforna and Tardon O'Brien and the Patrick Ra a Gorna Dina Galea. And I have Banha.
Tish, Vash, naini sin a hwyd cynchwine, tugmish cynchwine leis bas ar diarna fi call crwy ciana, agus tre effect na pasha, agus tre padja chadine, gwyl gref naf bwynt bach na dine gleir ta an ora yn ywgan. Kies agus bas ar diarna Christ, crucifixion and death for our Saviour. Ar na heri tar nef gan eif tanim gydag yr iach gynianta da heilir dalon mar niantra nef. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Gymania da chwyr at alon da gras da tanti an na let span hwyd yw naif gys span an torad yr ynys. Glóid don na heir don vach agus don spridnaif. Eternal rest granted to them, O Lord. May they rest in peace. May their souls, and the souls of all the faithful departed to the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.
Now standing each side of the plaque are the boys of Wexford, and I'd like their leader Richard Winters to come onto the stage now, please. You might know it, but yesterday morning some of these people left Wexford at 5:30. They stopped first at Crossbarry, put on their gear, drilled and marched there. They later eat there. They went from there to where Michael Collins was shot at Beelnablaw, and from there they came to Kilmichael, and they never passed a monument without stopping and paying homage to the people that died there and took part for a war of independence. And today, these boys from Wexford, to honour the men that were executed here, and we didn't know this was going to happen, they've brought a reed all the way from Wexford, and it will be the first reed to be laid at this monument. And I'd like Richard Winters to speak to you a few words, please. Richard.
Very Reverend Fathers and all good rebels who are here today, and of course our own beautiful colour party. I would like to thank the committee who invited us down here. We didn't know that this was going to happen at all, but we are very, very willing to go anywhere in the green grass of Ireland to honour the people who have died for Wexford, for Ireland. Well, when I say Wexford, we lost nearly 60,000 people at the 1798 rebellion. I'd like to thank Donald O'Leary and Don O'Leary, and I'd also like to thank James O'Leary as well, and his committee who organised this. And I can tell you, standing up here, I'm gobsmacked to see such a performance, which was carried out by the great rebels of Cork. And I'm proud to say the rebels of Cork, because I married a rebel myself. And indeed, she's very deep in the struggle for Irish freedom, going back, and I'm only going to mention Tom Barry, who a few miles away from here showed people what it was to stand up and be counted. I now would like to call on Dick Sinnott of our colour party to lay the wreath on behalf of the Robert Emmett Height Group. That's all right, and we will be back, and we'll always call to see him, and we will spend our few bob when we're passing by here to look after that man that looked after us. Thank you.
Tom Bjorn Frickle, number kind no. Here in nation Tom Many Loudave, and Tom will speak to you basically on the reasons why these people rebelled. Tom.
Chairman, so many special guests, and our friends from Wexford. Delighted to look at you. You're a brilliant colour party. But I cannot help thinking of one thing, the 98 Rising, and the scoundrels from North Cork and the militia that went down to murder the people that came before you. And I've only one regret, too many of them came back. This is a very special day here, and from my childhood I've heard of the field of the hanging. But before we discuss it further, this event belongs to all of us, to no individual, to no special organisation. It belongs to each and every Irish person, and it is only proper to commemorate such events. They're commemorated all over the world, and why not do it here? Today was an excellent parade, and God is kind to us, for we've got a brilliant fine day. If the Lord was after fixing up Saturday for Sunday, we couldn't come out at all the way yesterday was. We must turn our minds back and think of the Ireland of 1822 and go back further in the 1760s and 80s. Think how our forefathers and mothers, the people that inhabited the land around here, how they lived. Think of their poverty. Why had they to rise out? Why had there to be white boys? Why had there to be the Battle of Carriganima and all the other battles and all the hangings that took place? Think and close our eyes for a moment. What was on the table around 1800? What had the ordinary folk to eat? They had very, very little. They had just the bare necessities. People that came from abroad recorded 'twas the poorest diet that they ever saw. They had potatoes many times a day. 'Tis often said a good hard-working man would eat 8 or 9 potatoes a day when he'd have it for 3 meals. Sometimes they would have watercress with it. Other times there'd be special occasions, those that were looking to have cattle, when the cow calved. A trait was the beestings, which was boiled up and served. Also, they bled the poor old cow twice a year for blood, same as blood transfusion now, probably using the quill of the goose or of the turkey, and that was mixed with pinhead oatmeal, and everybody around here knows what that is. They were hard times. What had they for to light in their bahans? They had candles just made of larder, made of fat, and there was a rush pulled through them. They really had nothing to eat. And what were the Irish people looking for? They were looking for enough to put on the table for to feed their families. We had 1798. That was organised on a nationwide basis mostly, well, very much in Dublin anywhere in the north. But it was betrayed, and many a good man, both Catholic and non-Catholic, lost their life over it. We must remember that the 98 Rising was not confined to Catholics. The poorer Protestants were also involved. We had the Act of Union in 1800, which tied us completely to Britain. It got rid of the Irish Parliament. Catholic emancipation was promised in 1800, but it never came. Thus the lot of the Irish Catholic was getting worse and worse as time went on. He was supposed to pay tithes. He was supposed to pay tithes to the Protestant religion. I don't want to be discussing one religion against another, but when we talk about white boys we have to. For I am aware as well as everybody There were some great Protestants and people who were not Catholics who gave their life for Ireland so that we should be a free country. And we acknowledge this, but we are speaking more of the upper crust, bigoted Protestants of that era. The White Boys, they came into existence in 1761. Nearly every district there were atrocities carried out against the local people. There were cruel landlords. The tithes were collected of the Catholics to pay Protestants. That was very much resented by the Catholics. The White Boys were founded in Clonmel, 1761. They mostly operated in the counties Limerick, Tipperary, Cork, Waterford, Kilkenny, and also in parts of Wexford. And you had throughout Ireland many similar organisations that were rising out at a local level. They had no central command. We had the Rockites, which were formed in Limerick in 1821. They were formed in Limerick where a very hand landlord was evicting them, and they came together one night, a group, and they killed the landlord's son. Of course, there were terrible reprisals against them. They formed the Rockites in Munster. We had the Ribbonmen and the Defenders. They were known in Connacht. We had the Whitefield in Leinster. And we had the Hearts of Steel and the Hearts of Oak in Ulster. They used different names: Captain Moonlight, Captain Bright Night, Captain Buttons, Captain Search, all names that were to give a message to the people of authority. The White Boys were founded in 1761, and things took a strange turn and sad event in 1766, when Father Sheehy, a priest in Clonmel, was tried on trumped-up charges of murder. Found guilty, he was hanged. Not alone hanged, he was drawn and quartered. This was a terrible thing and very much resented by the local people. There is a ballad today on Father Sheehy. Unfortunately, I have not got it. A short time after his death, the crowds were flocking to his grave, and none more so than the White Boys. And after a short time, they adopted him as their patron saint. I would like to say at this stage that the White Boys also had their own catechism. And when you speak of this, people mix it up with the Roman Catholic Church catechism. It had nothing at all to do with that, really. I will quote, it was a question and answer, and may I quote some of the questions and answer from the White Boy Catechism of 1822. What is your art? The answer: a deep heart, a clear brain, a quick step, and sure aim. What distance is there between sun and moon? A square foot, an Irish hat in its full bloom. Who goes there? A friend. To what? To the blooming colours. What is in your mind? To die a friend to my country. How do you keep your secrets? In a bottomless pit that never will open. What is rounder than an egg? The bond of friendship. They were an organisation which were joined on oath. They were founded upon by church and state because they were a secret organisation. Now, the collection of tithes was something that was very important, because everybody had to pay tithes to the local Protestant rector. You can call them Jews if you like. And that was very much resented by the Catholics. But it was worse than that. There were no tithes on pasture land. Now, landlords owned thousands of acres of pasture land, but the smaller they got, the more people had land that was not in pasture. They had to grow grain to export it. They had to grow potatoes, and any income, they had to grow root crops. And any income they had, an evaluator would come out and assess it and say, you had to pay so much dues to the local rector. After that then, the process server would arrive. And if you did not pay then, your cattle were taken off you, or some at least of your property. It was held for a while, and if you did not pay, they were sold off. People assembled in their thousands in later years to back up the local people and get back their property. We had 1822 here in the Battle of Carriganima, and in that day in February, as James has gone through, there were 35 people exactly, I think, sentenced to death in Cork at the county court in Cork. That was a terrible amount of people. with the people in Deshore, Newmarket, Churchtown, Carriganima and all that. There were 2 people sentenced in Mill Street for just administering the oath of the White Boys. That was John Leary and the other man, I can't think of the name offhand now, we'll think of it in a minute, and they were sentenced to death. We don't know really what happened to them. There was also a Pat Leary from Dernagree who was sentenced to death here for attacking the rector's house in Clonderhood. The other man in Mill Street, I think of his name now, he was Garrett Cotter. We don't know really what happened to them. There are people here on this plaque and we don't know what was the end of them. And I would ask anybody that would have any knowledge of them anywhere to please communicate with them so that we could put the record straight. The White Boys were in existence for many, many years. They were still going on into the late 1860s, 70s, 80s as moonlighters. But while all this was going on, Daniel O'Connell was fighting for Catholic emancipation. Now, if you like, another change took place. Up to 1795, all priests who were on the run, but there was a bit of easing taking place, were educated in France. And they were coming back with very anti-English ideas, and they were preaching that to their flock here in Ireland. They had those ideas because France declared war in England in 1778. England and France went to war in 1803. But the authorities were speaking, I suppose, to the church in Rome and all that, and Maynooth was set up in 1795 with a grant of around £9,000, which was a huge amount of money at that stage. And everybody there was supposed to subscribe to authority. But it was harder than the priests that were there at the time, because the same as here, there were so many sentenced to death, so many sentenced to be hanged. But the magistrate on that day said, as James went through him, he said, we'll only hang them, some now, some again, and we will keep some in reserve. But if the people are quiet, we won't hang those people. Thus the news was around the priest's death for to go out very actively. And if that area was quiet, the people's lives were spared. If it kept revolting, these people would be hanged as well. So you were in a terrible position. You revolted, and your neighbour was taken from you because that sentence was over him until the day he was going to die. It was a terrible predicament to be in. Anyway, Daniel O'Connell was fighting for emancipation. He was fighting again for to repeal the Union of 1800. But he did not start his Catholic Association until 1 year after the hangings here. That was in 1823. Sad. There were, I suppose, 2 more examples I would like to give. In Ballyvourna, the Reverend Basil Orpin, he was the rector. He decided that he'd collect his dues and go out. I suppose he had nothing as well, he had to go and get them. But anyway, he seized some property around Ballyvourna. And if he did, the word went out. He kept them for so long to give them a choice of paying. The bells rang everywhere. They ran from door to door to Rainery, Collier, Killamatra, and on here to Clonderhood and Carriganima. The hundreds assembled around Ballyvourna. And the Reverend Basil Orpin wrote his superiors after that they came in their multitudes, he was afraid of them, and they were headed by their infuriated priests, and they released the property. One of the biggest battles that took place in October in County Kilkenny. This would be about 1830, where the process server went out to serve the process. He had 14 local policemen with him. He had the officer in charge, he had the process server, and the local inhabitants came at him, not with guns. They came at him, 500 of them with stones, good hardy big stones. And the battle started there and then. And in a short time the battle was over. And the police dispersed and there was no process served. But there were 14 policemen dead. The process server was dead. The officer in charge was dead. And over 25 white boys were dead as well. After that there was another rethink. And the whole system of collecting tithes changed around 1832 and was completely abolished about 1838. When we are here, and we don't want to be preaching animosity or anything, we should think of what the people before us suffered. They were our people, some blood relations, but at least they were the people that were in this country of ours long before we were born. Today is a reminder as we look up on the hill. Think of those hangings, 1, 2, 3, 4, one after another. The 2, 3, 4 had to witness the first hanging. I think myself that was something cruel. It was driven into the people. The terror was driven into them so that they would not be rising out again and again. Times have changed. We cannot, I suppose, really understand. And in the grand that their Sitchell crowd was here, with the band, with the colour party, we have everybody. And we should think, why did they go up there? They fought against injustice, and they just simply fought for to have enough of bread in their table for themselves and their families. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. That was an outstanding oration. And my thanks also to James for the account he gave of the happenings which took place here in the 1822 and 1827. Now to conclude, I will thank you all for your attendance. We have a fine crowd today and we are pleased to see you all. We want to thank God for the dry day, seeing that we had such wet weather all the week. I will thank Father Betty for blessing the monument, Father Donald O'Brien for saying the decade of the Rosary. I will thank Connie Foley for raising the flag. That was the first duty that was done. Again, thanks to Tom, our guest speaker. I think he did a fine job. James O'Leary, Tommy Goggin, and of course the late Dennis O'Connell for their research and for putting the whole thing together. James for putting the whole thing together, and his daughters, Deirdre and Margaret. A special thank you to the Wexford Pikemen. I mean, no words of mine could thank them enough. They added colour and dignity to the whole occasion. Right. Joe just told me that key has been found, so if anybody lost the key, we have it. As I say, thank you to the pikemen. It is a pleasure to have you, and we wish you success in any more of your marches and functions. We have to thank Don O'Leary for putting up the pikemen. Don is putting them up free of charge, and I hope they'll enjoy their stay in the mills. Thank you very much, Don. And I mean, we should all remember Don's generosity, and it's no harm maybe some of us gave Don a turn to thank him for what he has done. Next call, I thank Tim Ring for giving us the stone. It was there. Nobody's going to steal it. It was quite an effort to get it down. He brought it down his low loader, and there was always a danger that he would break what gear he had, but he brought it down and did site work, and we're very grateful to Tim for what he has done. Tim Ring Planter, I should say. Thanks to John Moriarty and Eddie Welsh for helping, for building doing the stonework. I think they did a magnificent job, and Michael Welsh, he helped out as well. Connie Bryan from Foss. Connie gave a clean up around the place. Forty Cohan, area engineer, and the staff of the Cork County Council. I really thought because I shouldn't make a mistake. Pauline O'Leary, curtains. She called did the curtain and she did the flowers. Christy Lucy Transport for the use of the truck, and Michael Gallagher who brought it over. Derry Murphy for making the sashes. Musgrave Memorials for doing the plaque. John Eyre for doing the sound. The Garda who came up and who were very good, who was great help to us. The stewards, all the lads who helped to keep the thing running smoothly. Board of Management and the staff, the Board of Management and the principal of Carriganima National School for the use of the school and the car park. And the ladies who were supplying refreshments afterwards. And when this is over, you all asked to proceed to Crowley's Bar or the school for refreshments. My thanks to our own committee. They were a pleasure to work with. I think everyone had in mind to erect a monument. We had no arguments, there were no hidden agendas. The main aim was to get up a monument and we'd just get on and do it. My thanks to the Mill Street Pipe Band. I think they too added colour and dignity to the occasion. thanks to Bernard Crowley for opening the pub. Bernard normally goes to rallies. There's a rally on today, and he stayed at home especially to open the pub for us. And once again, lest I make a mistake, I want to thank Deputy Don Milan for his attendance, Andrews Milan, Councillor Andrews Milan, Councillor Martin Coughlin, and Councillor Maria Murphy. Thank you, TD and councillors, for your attendance. Now we have apologies from Councillor Michael Creed, Mayor of Cork County. He is at prior engagements, but he sends us his best regards. Right. Okay, that ends the proceedings. After the national anthem, we would ask you to. Is there a song? Johnny Donegan will sing a song, and after that we'll have national anthem, and then we'll proceed over to the bar for refreshments. Thank you very much.
Shalom fenig Eg dein av mas mianta Eg eistak de gwilta Lebin chonen yon Nur a hulanga Eg jatta nir Is glornen jak Eg jakle shians Lefoi manar under grønnsliv Is near England man lår Han dørgen over Marra og garda det kan avni As kom og kri det sair At av dørgen trår Niran farban nashta Imana trevna tiaka Nagar gwes viaka Smilda lagon Ek vekken der norda Golar der nordimpad Ag lages eglina Sesquilana dro An lugerlan I vategin She dort gaf vacker valish trill Glushik a martan kanari As temish nahor Hana derla soyer Wing a shell canahen Slamana derna pantik Lefane gershon
Again, I want he. Okay.
But an unknown man from Kilmichael, he wrote a monologue to this, but God the man won't get his name. It will go down the grave with me, and it goes something like this. The history of Ireland is the history of oppression, depression, aggression, suppression, and especially obsession, and the struggle of the people against it. A history of grasping landlords, conniving politicians, corrupt policemen, their touts, their spies, their spotters, and informers who sought to deprive the people of their birthright. At right at times in this little country, these grievances have boiled over and left no other option open to the people but rebellion. Oh, then tell me, Sean of Farrell, tell me why you hurry so. Hush about the hush and listen, and his cheeks were all aglow. I bear orders from the captain, get you ready quick and soon. For the pikes must be together at the rising of the moon. At the rising of the moon, at the rising of the moon. For the pikes must be together at the rising of the moon. Oh, then tell me, Sean of battle, where the gathering is to be. And the old spot by the river, that's well known to you and me. One more word for signal token, whistle out the marching tune. Put your pike upon your shoulder at the rising of the moon. At the rising of the moon, at the rising of the moon. Put your pike upon your shoulder at the rising of the moon. Out from many's the mud wall cabin, eyes were watching through the night. Many a manly heart was beating for the blessed morning light. Murmurs rang along the valley to the banshee's lonely croon, and 1,000 blades were flashing by the rising of the moon. By the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon. And 1,000 blades were flashing by the rising of the moon. All along that singing river, that black mass of men was seen. High above their shining weapons hung their own beloved green. Death to every foe and traitor, forward strike the marching tune. And an army rise for freedom, 'tis the rising of the moon. 'Tis the rising of the moon, 'tis the rising of the moon. And an army rise for freedom, 'tis the rising of the moon. And an army rise for freedom, 'tis the rising of the moon.
We now finish with our Unveiling. Johnny, you play on that game too?
The clock in the town is now striking one. Down shall I turn to, so where shall I run? It says in the good books, an eye for an eye. A life I have taken, tomorrow I die. Build my gallows high, dig my grave down deep. Perhaps when it's over, I'll be able to sleep. The clock in the tower is now striking 3. Perhaps there is someone out there waiting for me. As I sit in my jailhouse, awaiting the dawn, our hope will be waiting, our life will be gone. Build my gallows high, dig my grave down deep. Perhaps when it's over, I'll be able to sleep. The clock in the tower is now striking 5. In less than 5 minutes, the guards will arrive. 'Tis sad but I'm leaving, and as I depart, the clock in the tower will stop with my heart. Build my gallows high, dig my grave down deep. Perhaps when it's over, I'll be
That's all healthy banter.
Are we in close enough? Want to go closer? Move in closer, lads. Move in closer. Move in closer.
Oh, yeah.
That's right, that's right.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I nearly got
You're glowing. You're glowing. And glowing.
Slow down a tiny bit to the man with a bad ankle.
More sensitive, huh?
Unveiling.
The giant great long turning tail, he'll ride back ahead of your band. 7 feet is his height and the ranges is fair, and he looks like a king in command. On the biles and the biles of the bone chandelier,
The bravest of heroes of man.
when your beers aloft and you're cheering and cheers for John Kelly and the white from the land. Carriganima is flames and the waves for the sun, and the barrow tomorrow we will cross. On the hill or the town they have planted a gun that will batter the gateways of Ross. All the sportmen and bondmen march on the heath with bravery to lead on the band. But the bravest of all in the grim gap of death will be carried away from Killarn. But the boats on the fields of the Ross.
Sorry, Andrew.
Brave sons of night for the cause of long downtrodden man. Glory O to Mount Answers, O darling, why don't say the bygone clan.
Well done, Tom. Good as ever. Go ahead. You got the tape, Jules? Huh? You got the tape?
No, yet I have some other from you.
That's right, sorry.
Mind the pikes, lad. Mind it. Just take them in, you know. Mind the handles.
Murder one of them. Are they on pioneers? I'm not driving for now. And I was up this morning till about 4:30, so I'm not pioneer.
Oh yeah, you won't put him on the bed, so.
Yeah, I won't put him on the bed, yeah.
Mostly along into the pub now, and it's cold now.
It is.
That went down well anyway. Yes, exactly, that's true.